Ever since I can remember, most of what we hear about Africa is about poverty. You hear about famine, you hear about droughts, you hear about civil war. But this cannot be a fair assessment of the whole continent, a region that includes over 50 different countries. It's true, many Africans face daily hardship and crisis. But it's also true that there is hope.
Coming to a place like Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world, there's always a bit of apprehension as to what you're going to see.
En période de crise alimentaire, les populations vendent tout ce qu'ils ont.
For me, it was the first time I visited a refugee camp. You wonder what the future holds for them.
Nous sommes des chrétiens, mais la CADEV a été créée pour appuyer toutes les personnes.
Haba jin daɗi ma kenan, haba. Kawai rawa ma kaɗai muka ta yi.
That was a trailer for the new Salt and Light television documentary, A New Leaf, which tells the story of the food crisis in Niger and the work that organizations such as Development and Peace are doing to help. And to help us talk about the food crisis in the Sahel region and poverty in Africa in general, I'm now joined by two wonderful guests, Kelly Di Domenico, who actually is in the documentary. Kelly is a communications officer for the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. And with her is Father Isidore Ouedraogo. He is the Executive Secretary of Caritas from Burkina Faso. So welcome both of you. Can you briefly describe the relationship between Development and Peace here in Canada and Caritas?
So Development and Peace is Caritas Canada. We're the Canadian member of Caritas Internationalis.
Okay. And Caritas Internationalis is the church's sort of...
humanitarian relief and development organization.
Like the pontifical...
Yeah, it's based at the Vatican. The head office is there. It's a network of 165 member organizations across the world.
Okay.
So our ties are through that head office. So when an emergency happens or a crisis, we will respond through the Caritas member in the local country.
Okay, and in this case, for example, the Caritas member would be
Burkina Faso. Yeah.
Your office in Burkina Faso.
Yes, Caritas.
Would there be a Caritas office in most countries? Like there's one in Burkina Faso, is there one in Niger?
Yes, we have also in Africa Caritas offices in the countries. Otherwise, in Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, Senegal, we have Caritas offices.
Right. Now, we keep talking about the Sahel region, and maybe just so that people who are maybe a little geographically challenged. So we're looking at West Africa.
Yes.
It's a strip of land. Can you maybe
you
tell
have
us
West Africa, and those who knows Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo. The Sahel region is on top of these countries.
Okay.
So
but below the Sahara.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's caught between the Sahara and sub-Saharan Africa.
And is there a particular, because of the geography of the region, are there particular issues that are specific to that region in terms of weather? Or?
Yes, in terms of weather, the climate here is very rude because we have just 3 months of rainfalls a year. So during these 3 months, we can also have agriculture. And also we have a problem, issue of water. in
Okay,
these
because it only
regions
rains
because
for
of the
3 months.
rainfall. And sometimes an issue of locusts coming from the deserts across our countries.
So the locusts,
Yeah.
they're like big grasshoppers?
Yeah.
What are they?
Yes.
And they
Yeah.
come from the desert.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, it's a phenomena.
It's a phenomena, yes.
Yes, taking place in the north of Mali and Mauritania and Morocco.
Okay.
And then when they have 3 weeks alive, they take to fly just across our countries, and they are taking all the leaves.
They just eat
when they
everything.
are
Interesting.
arriving.
So the food crisis, is specifically what we see in the documentary in Niger, was because the lack of rain and because a locust.
Not so much the locust. That can be a cause. It can
Okay.
place the crops. It can be a threat to the crops, but essentially it was because there was a very poor rainfall the previous summer.
Okay.
So the crop failed, and then people had very little, because essentially when they do that one harvest, that's their harvest for the
So
year.
that's right. So if that harvest fails, that's it.
That's
all
it.
or nothing.
Yeah.
So we talk about food crisis. We're not talking about famine.
It's a fine line. It can develop into a famine. Food
Yes.
crisis is more the people living in hunger with a certain amount of meals per day. So people at this stage, they're having
So they have some food, but
some food, but it's dwindling. And famine is when you've crossed that line where people are starting to really die from malnutrition, and
So-
it's critical.
and again, because I know we're talking about Niger, but I know Burkina Faso is a neighboring country.
Yeah.
Would this have affected your country as well? This particular food crisis?
Yes, this food crisis was certain on all the countries of Sahel.
That whole stretch.
Yes, because in 2012 we have 10 to 12 millions across our countries who suffered from the food crisis.
Okay. So then when there's a food crisis, I guess that's the example,
Yes.
your office, what sort of happens? How did we prevent that food crisis from turning into a famine?
Yes, when we have a food crisis, we have first to have an assessment to go to where the food crisis settled down and see what happened. Sometimes we can see the populations that they have one meal a day, and they are fetching leaves to complete their meal.
Okay.
And also they have selling their cattle or to buy food. So
Right.
their conditions they are going weak. So we have a good assessment, and we can see where is the food crisis and what to do
And how you
with
can help.
the population to help.
And the population in this area is mostly agricultural?
Yeah,
That's the
mostly
economy?
subsistence farming.
So it's
Yes.
subsistence farming, small villages?
Yeah.
Yes, more villages.
Yeah. So other than coming in with food, what else can be done, or what else were you doing that helped?
Well, one of the things that was really, I would say, a very hopeful sign with this food crisis. A food crisis is never hopeful, but
Yeah.
for instance, there was a lot of warning ahead of time. So we were able to mobilize really quickly. We partnered with the Canadian Food Grains Bank, and we were able to organize programs with Caritas Burkina Faso, for instance. So that's one of the reasons it helped it from preventing it turning into a famine. So apart from food distributions, we also did what we call cash for work,
Right.
where people they'll create work projects that are in the community that are geared towards sustainable development, but where people get an income so then they can go buy food on the market.
So these are people that normally would not be working because they're farmers.
They're farmers.
But
They'd be
they can now get a job doing whatever infrastructure
exactly.
projects. Or
Yeah.
Would that happen in conjunction with local government, or is the
Yes.
government completely out?
No,
Yes, there's a conjunction with local government, because what we are doing is taken on the program of the local government.
So programs that already exist?
Yes, the programs of the government exist,
Okay.
and we try to go on the same line as the government.
Okay.
When we have to act
Okay.
in the field.
But if it's cash for work, the cash comes in from your organizations?
yeah, essentially we work with Caritas Burkina Faso, so the cash will be transferred to them.
Okay.
And then either they'll do the payments, or there'll be local agreements that it'll be the local government doing the payments, et cetera. So there's always, like, we ensure that, local legalities are being respected, and it's done according to
Right.
how the village or the
Okay.
community functions.
So it's really a community, a collaboration between not just the church, other organizations. In the case of
Yeah.
Canadian Food Grains,
Yeah.
that's a Christian organization
Yes.
here in Canada, and government, so that's good. We're going to take a little break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to continue talking, but specifically I want to talk about the issue of civil war, and I don't want to say government corruption, but I know that's also a problem in some of these countries. So stay tuned.
Let us know your perspective. Email us at perspectives@saltandlighttv.org or reach us by mail, Perspectives at Salt and Light Television, 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, or call us toll free at 1-888-302-7181. Let your perspective be heard.
The government of Canada tells its citizens not to come to Niger, and if they do, to not leave the capital, and especially not to go near the border with Mali. But that's exactly where we're headed. To ensure our safety, we're accompanied by soldiers from the army. The threat of kidnapping is real. This same year, foreign workers have been captured and killed. The most serious concern is a group called Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. Al-Qaeda is also the reason all these people are here. In February 2012, rebels linked with Al-Qaeda took control of northern Mali. Malians fled to refugee camps, like this one in Niger.
Kam Mali bumboner di gogo zuru. Bumboer zuru. Wakan se labu bumbo humbur. Wakan labu bumbo humbur. Gogo humbur misilma kango go Mali gare. Wedin sir zuru. Ino buri an karem. Ay bande.
Again, that was a scene from the new Salt and Light television documentary, A New Leaf. Now, Father Isidore, I understand that you, growing up, also experienced some poverty. Can you tell us a little bit about what your family went through?
Yes, my family is an agricultural family and a poor family.
Yeah.
And we had our fields, and I had my own experience of a problem of a lack of food in my family. And I know that at this moment, the family is suffering, and also a kind of solidarity is organizing between family sufferings. Those who have just a small food to eat, they have to share also with those who can have this food. And this kind of solidarity gave me as a impression, and also formatted me for my life.
Formed you, yes.
Yes, for my life here. So I'm too sensitive about food.
Yes.
And lack of food.
Now, when you were growing up, what was the political situation? I don't even know what I mean, we hear what's happening in Mali.
Yes.
But nobody hears about Burkina Faso.
Yeah. Yes, in my country we have a government, and we have a president who rules since 25 years ago.
Okay, but it's stable?
Stable. because it's there 25 years ago. But yes, it's a country who is stable socially, economically, and also politically.
So how is the situation that's happening in Mali, which is just to the north of you and to the north of Niger, how is that affecting, I guess, both of these countries?
Yes, it's affecting our country first because of the problem of the crisis, the reason of the crisis.
Okay.
It's an Islamic, extremist Islamist crisis.
In Mali.
In Mali.
And that's forcing people from Mali.
Yeah, they're forcing people from Mali
to come
south, so in the north of Burkina.
Okay, so that's the scene that we saw. That's where there's a refugee camp.
Yes.
And you were there. Was that the first time you'd been to a refugee camp?
It was, yeah. Essentially, people are crossing into Niger, Burkina Faso, Mauritania as well.
Because they have to.
Because they're fleeing. It was the first time I was in a refugee camp, and that one was a very new refugee camp. It had only been established for a few months. So it was so arid and it was so hot and dry.
No, I guess that's a whole other issue, but it impacts the food issue in that now there's more people to feed.
Well, what happens as well too is some people don't go into refugee camps, they go live with family. So a family that may have 10 people to feed already are now trying to feed 20 people.
Because they have relatives that come from
or just,
Mali or from another
exactly. So that it creates a huge pressure on communities that are already struggling to feed themselves.
So those refugees that we saw in the film, I mean, they're still refugees in camps? Is that still the situation?
Yeah, and there's still people that are, I believe there's about 60,000 refugees now in the region.
In the whole region?
In the whole region.
I guess not both countries, because there's, 9 countries?
No.
Maybe
Burkina, Niger, and Mauritania.
Yeah, so about 60,000 in those.
Okay.
The camp we visited, there were 7,000 people and about 300 arriving per day, I believe. So it creates a lot of displacement. I visited in Mali as well, people who had traveled into the south of Mali. And again, had a diocese there had given over some housing to the people so they could take refuge. And I mean, even though they're just a few 100 kilometers away, they can't go home.
So we're talking, I mean, we started talking about poverty, and we've talked about food crisis and civil war or refugees. Where's the hope for this region, for your country? Is there hope?
Yes, I think there's a hope, a huge hope of peace because all the population is conscious that they have to take their own future in their hands. So they're willing to be in the good conditions, even for the governments. We have seen the populations asking for good conditions for their life. They have demonstrations. They are speaking, and at the local situations, we have seen some populations telling no to some decisions of the governments. So that conscience of the populations is very important for all.
So they're taking more responsibility over their own lives, not expecting the government or other countries to help them necessarily, which I guess is hopeful.
And demanding that their governments provide the services they should be, education, health, building roads. You know, there's it's something we work on a lot at Development and Peace is democratization, and people need to be aware that their elected officials can be accountable.
Yeah, well, and hopefully they can do it in a democratic way and that it doesn't lead to civil unrest or civil war. Anyway, we have to leave it there, but we always like to conclude by leaving the last word to the one who is the Word. And so here is a passage that I think is familiar to a lot of us from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 48 to 51. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever, and the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. Again, that's John chapter 6, verses 48 to 51. Kelly, would you like to start?
You know, you were speaking about hope, and that passage, it makes me think about one of the programs we supported were food distributions, and we always privilege the most vulnerable, so widows, people with physical disabilities, single mothers, and even as little as those people had, when they received food, they would share it with their neighbors. Even that's all they had to eat for a month, and they would give it. And to me, that's just so inspiring, because it teaches us, because we have as much to learn from people in the global south, that, you know, we all have something to share, no matter how poor we are. And it being Lent, and it's a time for sharing and creating that solidarity. So that's what, you know, the bread that's spoken of in here, that gives life and keeps us going.
Father Isidore.
When I hear this passage, the question is, what is the flesh of Jesus today for us to share with the word, with the people? What we are sharing as a church nowadays in these situations of food crisis and other crises is the solidarity between people, solidarity between nations, solidarity from those who are suffering to those who have also something to give. So what we are building is the real church of Jesus. And the church of Jesus is, for me, his flesh, to give to our society today. So the work of development peace, the work of Caritas all over the world in the name of the church is to give that new life to people. And whenever we are giving something to share with people, we are giving life. And in this condition, we know that we are in the Lent.
Our Lent campaign is on right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So whenever someone gives something to development peace to share, we are giving life somewhere in the world.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Thank you. That it's really about life. And Jesus said, I came to bring life and that you would have it abundantly. Thank you so much for coming all the way to Canada to spend some time with us. Father Isidore Ouedraogo, he's the Executive Secretary for Caritas in Burkina Faso, and Kelly Di Domenico, she's a Communications Officer for the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. You can find out more about the work that Development and Peace is doing and their partners with Caritas all over the world at their website, devp.org. And you can find out more about our production. I guess it's a kind of like a partnership production with Development and Peace, the documentary A New Leaf. Just go to our website, saltandlighttv.org/A New Leaf. Just go to that website and find out all the details of the airtimes. So thank you for being with us. This is all for tonight. May God continue to bless you and your home, and may God continue to bless Africa.
Thank you very much.